Learn from stars and heroes of the Dubai business world. Welcome to the Dubai Business Podcast, produced by Jayed. Now, here's your host, Lucas Krejcia.
Do you want to get more customers for your business? Then doubling down on your sales process can be one of the most effective ways to do it. Before the pandemic, many small businesses had no active sales process as they were relying on inbound business. But that has changed. Many SMBs notice a drastic drop in the leads and inquiries they would organically get. Be it because of decreased demand or increased competition, the fact is that going out there and look for the right customers yourself is becoming a must. Today, I'm speaking with Josh Yates, Sales Director of Saphyte, a UAE-based CRM solution for small and medium businesses. He will take you through the main mistakes SMBs make in a sales process. We'll discuss how to identify the ideal customer or how to hire a salesperson to your team. Josh, welcome to the Dubai Business Podcast. Thanks for making time for this. And let's discuss the sales process for SMBs in the UAE.
No problem at all, and thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to having a chat, and hopefully I can give you some insights and takeaways.
I'm certain we'll be able to do it. So let's start with what do you see as a typical mistakes small businesses make in the sales process?
Look, I think as a starter, there are many. One of the things that startups and SMEs have to recognize from a very early stage is that mistakes are going to happen. Business is changing quickly, markets are changing. 2020 is an obvious example of that. So I think putting the steps in place to appreciate that mistakes are going to happen and the right processes after that in terms of learning is extremely important. But for example, one of the things that we found that we work very closely with startups and small businesses, especially here in Dubai, where you've got industries like e-commerce, fintech, health tech, you look at regulation tech, all different industries where technology is coming in and disrupting and startups kind of booming. We find that most startups spend a lot of time investing time and money and cash into building a product and the idea. But when it actually gets to the stage of selling it and building the front end, putting the team in place, they're left with no cash or no real process in place and it falls apart. And we've seen that multiple times. Often they're kind of scrambling backwards to work out, how to sell the product with no cash left. And we've seen businesses fail. So I think from that perspective, it's probably startups and SMEs not taking the sales process seriously enough. Not taking the time to actually think about, who the customer is and the team that they need to have in place. That's probably one of the biggest mistakes that we see commonly.
Okay.
Another thing,
Sorry, let's get into it. Get into the other points later on. I just wanted to dig deeper on this one. What do you think is the moment where basically I need to start considering sales for my, and let's now probably focus on B2B side of the business. What's the moment where I need to be thinking of my sales army or sales team? What's the moment in the company life cycle?
Look, I think in my opinion, as soon as you have an idea about a product or a service, you should know who your customer is. That's who you should be designing it for. From that stage, as soon as you know who the customer is, you should start to build out your sales proposition. How are you going to sell it? What's the message you want to get out to the market? And then that should run alongside the rest of the plans that you put in place. It's very hard to backtrack once you've built everything and then thinking about how to sell it, as opposed to the other way around and letting the two grow together.
Okay. Do companies know it at the beginning, who is really their customer and how to go after them? Or is it trial and error?
It's a mixture. A lot of these business founders and entrepreneurs have great ideas, but they're all varied in personalities, and the way that they want to carry out business. For example, you might have someone that's extremely good in technology and the product is amazing, but when it comes to business processes, etc., they're not really too well versed in how to carry it out. Other people might be the other way. They might be extremely good in sales and marketing and have an idea of how to actually maximize a product in terms of getting it out there and selling it, but then the idea is not right. So, it's a case by case basis.
Yeah, got it. All right. Any other mistakes you've noticed what the small businesses or startups make in the sales?
Yeah, I think definitely one of the top ones is not having a plan in place. No sales process, no methodology, no structure. One of the big ones, it's rich coming from me, but it's not having a CRM in place. But I think for professionals that have been in sales for a long time, or a couple of years and onwards, they appreciate how important it is to have a process, a structure, and a methodology in terms of making it a success. Perhaps some, business owners within small businesses they're not aware of that, so they don't put it in place, and then it falls apart. So you see things where, I've seen businesses that are trying to sell to absolutely everyone, with no real clear idea on who their profile of customer is, what their pitch is, etc.
So if I'm that person who has no idea about how the sales process should look like, would you tell me? How would you guide me on that?
That's a good question. I think the first thing to do is, depending on your budget, is to employ someone that has some experience in sales and has done it before. Trying to learn it yourself in a short amount of time, or even a couple of years, it would be tough. So you find like most business owners would try and find someone that's done something similar and bring them into the business and help them set that process up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. At early stages, very often the sales is done by the founder himself or herself, right? Do they usually have it structured, or is it the case that they maybe have something in mind and they just go with the flow and they just try to get the customers kind of randomly?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, man. I think the first 3 to 6 months is all around mapping out the market and understanding like feedback and learning, right? So what often happens is in that stage, like you said, the business owners might sell into family or friends or acquaintances, people they trust that, maybe the investment isn't large, but they can give them the feedback they need. So it's not the process isn't as similar as then taking that product out to completely new customers that have never heard of you before. It's very different. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, you're right.
Okay. Can we maybe try to describe example on your case, how your sales process look like? We're trying to get is to really explain it to people who have no sales experience and are maybe not really sure what the sales process might look like. So maybe can we take your example and try to describe it on that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, look, what you're trying to do by setting up a sales process is a couple of things. Number one is to make the buyer's journey as frictionless and as easy as possible. So you've not got customers falling away at the wayside. The other side of it is you obviously want your sales team to be in line with the buyers and pushing everything through to the process. So if you've never seen a sales process before, the standard ones look like you have a scale from start to finish. Number one is maybe not qualified. You've never spoken to the company before. Qualified, you've asked them a few questions. They're kind of interested in the product. The budget is there, it fits, and they want to talk to you. Then you've got something like investigating. This is maybe where you're out meeting the customer. You're having real conversations about the product. Then you've got a proposal, and then close and after sales. But having that in place obviously allows you to map out where the customer is in the journey, keep your sales guys in line with them along that journey and pushing it through. But also from a management perspective, it's being able to see where are things going wrong, where are they going right, and what do I need to do to make the sales process better and sell more, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. I think the key to be able to do that is to understand that sales is not a one-step process, right? It's not a question of one phone call to the customer, say, hey, I have this product and your company should buy it. And the person on the other side of the phone would be, yeah, amazing. Okay, send me the invoice, right?
I wish it was that easy.
Yeah, but there's this perception, I feel also on the marketing side, that very often clients expect kind of, okay, let's have this Facebook ad, we will have one ad and, people will see the ad and they will go and buy our product. What they don't see that even in marketing and in sales and both of it, it's basically multiple stages, and I need to kind of think of what I do at each stage of the process, right?
Exactly, yeah. And I mean, if you've ever worked for an owner that doesn't understand business process, you know how frustrating it is when you have a lead come in and it's expected to be closed every single time, and you've got to explain that there's a process behind it. So yeah, I think definitely, like, going back to your first point, is kind of linked to this, like setting up the business with people that know about sales is definitely a good start to overcome some of that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Another thing you mentioned that the small businesses, very often they try to sell to everyone, that they don't do properly the customer identification, let's say. How to tackle that?
Well, we use something called profiling. So you can profile in many different ways. It's similar to how you guys do things in marketing, although marketing nowadays is a lot more specific in that you're going extremely granular down into like personality types and things like that. I'm not a marketing expert, but in terms of like business and sales, we look at things like specific industries where maybe the product is a good fit, like specific sizes of companies, how many employees have they got. Basically what it means is, as businesses want to scale up and grow something, they can begin to build up a certain reputation, credibility in a specific industry, as opposed to scattering everywhere. There's a very famous UK phrase that I'm not going to use because it's some bad language, but you throw enough stuff at the wall and some of it will stick. It's kind of good in the short term, but long term, when you really want to grow, you've limited yourself massively. So yeah, it's profiling. And again, you probably know this yourself, but that first 3 to 6 months is all around speaking to lots of people, but then we're finding out who those profiles are.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's maybe again try to be more specific, and you see yourself as an example. So what are the questions you ask yourself basically to qualify if, let's say, this company is the right prospect for you or not?
Yeah, I mean, from perspective, what you really want to know is, are they interested to talk to you? Okay, so you need to be in line with them before that and know that the product fits. Okay, there's nothing worse than taking someone 4 or 5 steps through that sales process and then the product's the wrong product. It's a waste of time. So does the product fit? Have they got the money for it? Are you speaking to the right person is obviously a very important one. And that's kind of your basis to know that this is something that I want to continue with. It's a good opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. The first one, product fit, since you guys offer basically CRM tool, I could imagine that it's tempting to say that every B2B company needs a CRM, right? So how do you niche down to the customer segment when you find your product fit?
What do you mean specifically?
How did you really niche that target segment of customers where you know that your product is basically the best fit for this type of customers?
Yeah, okay, perfect. Sorry, I get you now. I've been in the region for 4 or 5 years, so I have my background was in events. I worked with lots of different industries from banking, retail, e-commerce, everything. So I had some good connections in the right decision-making capacity. So the first thing to do was to kind of speak to those guys, map out what the CRM market looks like in those industries, who are the other players, who are our potential competitors, who would be using it within the business. What else? If there's an appetite to learn about new technologies, is the market having a good time? Is it having a bad time? Because obviously, that stuff changed when the pandemic came in, but obviously you want to make sure that there's an appetite and there's money in the market and people want to buy things. So I guess the first thing was speaking to those people and then refining which ones are the definitely we don't want to go near those guys because it's a waste of time. And these ones are the good ones. We should put maybe a salesperson or 2 on each and let them broaden that out and see how we go. Okay,
perfect. Makes sense. You've mentioned 2020 obviously several times. I cannot not ask, how did things change in your sales process this year? If you compare a few months back to today, how are things changing?
It was tough, man. I mean, look, I came in here with the team probably 2 weeks before coronavirus hit the UAE and the lockdowns happened. So for the first probably 3 to 4 months, we worked remotely. We'd never been in the office. We didn't see each other. So don't get me wrong, it was a challenge. But from a business perspective, traditional industries that we had profiled before, like I just mentioned to you, that process, e-commerce, retail, like traditional retail and these sorts of industries, they were just absolutely flatlined. And, you talk to these guys and you can tell they're telling you the truth, like nothing's happening. We're not selling anything. We're really struggling. So we had to be fluid and adaptable to that. Otherwise, we just sit there and fester. So it was all about looking at new industries that are coming up, e-commerce, even things like, we did some deals with manufacturers of masks and healthcare equipment because we knew that the inquiries had gone through the roof. So just being adaptable, fluid, and in touch with what's going on enough to see new opportunities. But yeah, we had a brief chat about this before we started the podcast. I mean, it has been a tough year, but you've got to keep driving forward and being positive.
Yeah, absolutely. Did anything change also in the way how you approach those prospects? I don't know, obviously everything went remote, so I would probably guess you don't have as many in-person meetings as you might expect.
Yeah, that's one of the bankers in sales is obviously to meet people face to face because there's so many great things you can do with just reading people's body language and whatnot. But everything was done. LinkedIn became a massive tool for us. I think it's still that way now. Most people I speak to are prioritizing social media, and LinkedIn is a key tool for prospecting. We had to get used to the video calls, the video demos. So yeah, there was lots of new stuff to deal with, but it worked out fine in the end.
Okay, great to hear that. We cannot miss the topic of CRM. While I know you didn't want to focus too much on it, but what would you say are the key things when I'm considering to start using a CRM? Because I think we don't have to discuss, like, CRM makes things in sales process way more effective. So what are the things I should consider when I want to now start using a CRM, let's say?
Yeah, I mean, that's quite a broad question. What you try and understand with businesses is like what is driving their need to go digital. Now, take the UAE, for example. It's miles and miles behind the likes of Europe, Asia, and the US when it comes to having digital tech in to look after customers. Businesses here now are starting to realize that they need to modernize, they need to go digital because all of their customers, partners, prospects are digital. So if that need is there and they've recognized it, then that's something that CRM should be able to help them with. Otherwise, you're failing at kind of the first hurdle. Yeah, I mean, that's a brief.
Okay, that's a good start. I'll try to be a bit more specific. Let's say I'm now a person or a business owner who's kind of keeping track on his leads. Something is in business card, something is in my Google Sheet, something is in my notes. What can be the benefit of having this all in CRM, investing in CRM and learning with a new tool for me?
Yeah, no business can be effective managing things on multiple different platforms, especially take B2B, for example, which is where we play mainly. When you have these B2B sales, they're often anywhere from 2 weeks up to 6 months, 9 months, a year. Lots of communication with the customer, lots of different inquiries coming in, people involved in the decision-making unit, documents being sent around. You'll know as well as I do because you have a sales background. One small mistake, one piece of misplaced information, and you can lose a deal. And that can be worth potentially a lot of money. So having all of that in one place just means you're more productive, you can make more insightful decisions and hopefully close more deals, which is the end goal of where we're trying to get to.
Yeah, and I found for myself personally as a small business owner, what is really beneficial is kind of have one place where I can go and kind of remind myself of what are the open conversations. Because nowadays I think we need follow-ups more than ever before because conversations are kind of fading away. So having this one place where I can go and see all the open conversations, I don't really remember what inquiries I got last week, right? But if I have one place where I can go and see it and know that, okay, I need to follow up with this person today, I need to follow up with two more tomorrow, that's probably what can make the whole process more effective for me.
Exactly. That's a very good point. There's so many different channels nowadays where customers communicate. Like, it sounds very obvious here, but you've got email, you've got the mobile phone, you've got text, you've got WhatsApp, you've got social media, you've got all of these other different tools that are coming out now to help businesses. And you're exactly right. Having all of that placed centralized into one, one system allows you to not miss any tricks, not miss any leads, and get on top of things pretty quickly. The other thing is when you think about the next step on, which is making like insightful decisions for your business, how can you analyze data that is on disparate technologies? It's here, it's here, it's there. You have to do it in silos, right? If you get everything into one place, you can actually start to understand what is the profile of customer across this? Who are we really getting inquiries from? Do we need to change what we're currently doing and move? So there's lots more behind it away from just leads management. It really is like making big strategic decisions to grow the business or make decisions that save the business.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Joshua, one more topic I wanted to touch on. You're just at the phase where you have hired a lot of people to your team. So what would you advise to business owners who are now looking to hire salespeople to kind of fuel the growth or the customer acquisition now?
Don't do it. I mean, I've grown some grey hairs over the last few weeks. Like you said, we've just scaled up, but there's a lot to learn. I think you really need to take the process seriously. You need quite long interview processes. You need to try and get to know someone's personality as much as possible. This year has been really, really difficult because obviously lots of people have been unfortunate and they've lost their jobs. So the job market is absolutely flooded and you get hundreds and hundreds of applicants. You can't read through them all, but I think the culture now is, I see these job postings and people are like, you need this much experience in this market. I don't think that stuff is so much as important as a person's personality and how they come across. You know, you want to make sure, for me, have they got the personality? Do they have the grit, like the appetite? Do they really want to come and work here? Do they want to learn? That stuff is really, really valuable as opposed to, what everyone has on the CV. I've got 3 years experience in sales. I've done this, blah, blah, blah. But some tips and tricks, I guess. Role plays is a great thing to do in an interview process. So often you can ask questions and have that face-to-face meeting is one thing, but if you carry out a role play, they're a bit awkward, don't get me wrong, but you can start to understand, do they actually know about the sales process? Have they got an idea of where this is going? Simple things like, can they take notes? Role plays are a good way of doing that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, because from my experience of hiring salespeople, one thing which is tricky is that they are usually very good at selling themselves during the interview, right? And if you're let's say a founder again who doesn't really have experience with this, it might be very easy to kind of fall for this bait and hire someone who in the end will not be the best fit, just because they were doing good sales of themselves during the interview process.
You're exactly right. There's this old perception of salespeople. It's why I think actually salespeople have a bit of a negative connotation. Why people don't want to speak to them on the phone. That salespeople have the gift of the gab, so they're naturally born with it. That's not the way it is. It doesn't work like that. It's a process that you can learn through experience. But you're exactly right. I think making sure that person has the right personality and culture to fit in is extremely important. Like you said, otherwise you're going to invest a lot of time and money bringing someone into the business and training them, and then they're going to be back out the door within 2 or 3 months when there's a better opportunity, or they don't quite like some way you work. So yeah, I think from personal experience. Take your time with it. Do it properly. Put effort into it. Don't just kind of think I can go and get 5 salespeople and I'm naturally going to sell loads. Doesn't work like that.
Absolutely. Just let's wrap it up with kind of some takeaways for this business founder who really wants to start now with the sales process, take it seriously. So what would you say are, let's say, 2-3 tips in 2020, how in a Q4 to make most out of it now?
I'd say don't do it in 2020 because it's been a terrible year. Save it to 2021. Key tips. I think speak to people around you that are close to you that have done it before. You don't have to reinvent the wheel with this stuff. I'm guilty of it myself sometimes. Sometimes I want to control everything and know exactly how to do it. But there are people out there that have done this before and have been successful. Speak to those people, ask questions. You'd be surprised. I've taken advice from people in my network that I've never really had a relationship with, but I just explained what I was doing. I'd seen that they'd been successful there and they were happy enough to just give me some advice and point me in the right direction. So the help is out there. And yeah, just take it seriously. There's lots of information out there on the web. You've got the podcast like you're kindly doing here. Invest time into it and really get it set up so you don't end up kind of stuck a couple of months down the line not knowing where to go. I think probably a good start.
And let's go and do it. That's probably the start.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Josh, thank you very much for your time, for the valuable tips. I hope it will be useful for many in our audience.
This was the Dubai Business Podcast produced by Jayed. Follow us on your favorite podcast platform and on social media at jayid.co/podcast. That's JAYID.co/podcast.